Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, when you picture a great invention, maybe the airplane or the telephone, the story we usually tell is about that lone genius, right? Late night, maybe? And then boom, that sudden light bulb moment.
Right, the myth of inspiration. It's very romantic.
It is. But the sources we're looking at today, well, they paint a completely different picture, a much more, frankly, demanding way to innovate.
Yeah, what's really striking here is how it just throws out that idea of passive inspiration.
Yeah.
The main figure in our source is this person they call the guru. He just cuts through all that.
How so?
He basically says creativity isn't about getting an idea, it's about winning a fight. His words were, it wasn't inspiration, it was me not letting go of that problem.
Wow. Okay, not letting go. That immediately shifts things, doesn't it? It's not waiting, it's
Mm.
actively pursuing, aggressively.
Exactly. Aggressively.
Yeah.
This source material is really arguing that the biggest breakthroughs, the ones that, change things on the civilizational level, they come from pure will. What the guru apparently called a divine creation will, accumulated over 30 years, 10 years, 10 years, and 10 more years.
Decades. We're talking decades of focus.
Yes, decades.
Yeah.
It's kind of intense commitment that just doesn't fit with how we tend to think about, well, about anything these days, really. Short-term cycles.
So our mission for this deep dive is to examine that. We'll look at 4 really different inventions in photography, air quality, even legal strategy, to see how this relentless focus, this soul refusing to let go, as the source puts it, doesn't just tweak things, but actually changes the rules of what's possible.
And I think before we even get to the inventions themselves, we really need to unpack the mindset.
Yes.
Because that's the foundation for everything else. It's like the operating system driving it all.
Okay, let's do that. The mindset. So usually when we hit a tough problem, the default is what? Pivot, compromise, wait for more data.
Right. Or just give up.
Or give up, yeah. But the guru's approach, it sounds almost fanatical in comparison. He says, I must think it out even if I have to die trying. That's extreme.
It is extreme. And it does raise a fair question. Is thinking about something for 30 years genius, or is it just being stubborn, fixated maybe? How do you tell the difference?
That's a really good point. Is it just fixation? But the sources suggest it wasn't blind stubbornness. There was a method, right? Specific rules guiding this relentless pressure.
Absolutely. It's like structured stubbornness. The golden rules mentioned aren't just slogans. They sound like a real work ethic. For example, one is, I am the terminus of the problem.
The terminus, meaning the end point. Like, it stops with me.
Exactly. He takes full ownership. He refuses to pass the core difficulty on to someone else. It lands on his desk, and it stays there.
And then there's that really aggressive one. I don't wait for inspiration. I make difficulty surrender. That sounds less like waiting for a muse and more like waging a siege.
It does. And think about the internal pressure that creates. Another rule. If it's not solved, I won't forgive it. If you adopt that, you can't just let things go unfinished. It builds this intense internal accountability.
So he wasn't just passively thinking for decades. He was actively, iteratively applying pressure, managing this intellectual battle over his whole career.
Precisely. He even said, if I can't figure something out, I can think about it for 30 years. Not maybe I'll think about it, but I can and will if needed.
Which means this isn't just about technical invention for engineers. This is a blueprint for anyone listening, right? If you're facing some really intractable problem, maybe in business or even personally.
Yes. The breakthrough, according to this philosophy, doesn't come from waiting for brilliance. It comes from this deep, sustained commitment to finding closure, to solving it fully.
Okay, let's see it in action then. The first case study involves photography and a 30-year effort.
That's right. 30 years focused on capturing visual truth.
And this is something probably a lot of us can relate to. Digital cameras and that automatic white balance. You take a picture, it looks great on the screen, but the colors, they're just weird sometimes.
Exactly. Too yellow inside, maybe too blue in the shade. The camera guesses, and often guesses wrong. The guru called them nonsense colors.
Nonsense colors. I like that. So for him, this wasn't just a technical glitch.
No, not at all. He saw it as like a betrayal of reality. The technology should serve what the eye actually sees. So his refusal was, I don't allow the camera to randomly change the reality I see. He wouldn't accept the machine imposing its errors on the world.
Okay, so 30 years later, what was the breakthrough? Not just better software, I'm guessing.
No, it's a physical device, the directional white balance filter.
A filter. How does that work differently?
Well, typical auto white balance tries to guess the overall light source. This directional filter, though, it corrects the color based on the actual direction you're shooting and how the light is deviating as it hits the sensor from that specific angle. It's much more precise, much more tied to the physical reality of the shot.
Wow. So the 30 years weren't just about fixing a bug, they were about fundamentally changing how the camera perceives reality.
Exactly. The source sums it up really well. He beat physical distortion with time and essentially corrected the optical world with tenacity. It's quite profound when you think about it like that.
It really is. Okay, so from visual reality to air quality. This involves two inventions, right? Over 20 years.
Yes, the air revolution. And this one started from a very personal place. The guru apparently suffered from severe chronic allergies.
Ah, so personal necessity driving innovation.
Definitely. When medicine and just, avoiding triggers didn't work, his decision was incredibly bold. If the air makes me sick, I will rebuild the air.
Rebuild the air. Okay, that's ambitious. So the first decade.
Focused on purification. Problem A, let's call it. This led to the Air 6-No Labyrinth Purifier. And that name, 6-No, is important.
Right. What are the 6 no's? What was it targeting?
Okay, so according to the source, this purifier created what it calls a true 6-No air barrier. It aimed to eliminate formaldehyde, benzene, TVOCs. Those are volatile organic compounds, microbes, allergens, and crucially, ultra-micro-toxic particles.
Ultra-micro. How small are we talking?
This is the really mind-blowing part. It was designed to purify particles down to PM 0.0001.
PM 0.001. Most public health discussions focus on PM 2.5.
Exactly. PM 2.5 is already fine particulate matter. PM 0.001 is, well, it's thousands of times smaller. We're talking almost molecular scale filtration. It's why the source calls it a survival air revolution. It redefined what clean air could even mean.
Okay, so that's decade one. Solve the toxicity problem, but you said there was a second part.
Yes, because solving problem A created problem B, the oxygen paradox. If you create this perfectly sealed, incredibly purified space, you run the risk of oxygen levels slowly depleting over time. You solve one problem, but create another potential imbalance.
Ah, right. Makes sense. You need fresh air, but fresh air brings back the pollutants.
Precisely. And the guru refused to accept that trade-off. He didn't want people to become unbalanced due to lack of oxygen, even in this ultra-clean environment.
So that required another decade of focus. How do you solve that?
That second 10 years led to the sweet sleep paradise on Shui Xiaqiantang. It's described as a micro-fresh air introduction device.
Micro-fresh air?
Yeah, the idea is it brings in just enough fresh air to maintain stable oxygen levels, but it does so in a way that works with the labyrinth purifier. It doesn't compromise that PM 0.001 barrier. It completes the whole system, like adding the breathing module.
So 20 years total. First, remove everything harmful down to an unprecedented level, then figure out how to add back only the essential element oxygen without breaking the seal.
Exactly. It's a complete system, born from refusing to accept an incomplete or compromised solution, driven entirely by that initial refusal to just accept bad air.
Incredible. Okay, now the last case study feels a bit different. It's about legacy, patents.
Yes, this is perhaps the most abstract example, but it really shows the depth of this obsessive will, the meta problem, as you called it.
Right. Any great invention, eventually the patent runs out, imitators arrive, the initial advantage fades. That's just the business cycle, isn't it?
It is. But the guru's focus, according to the source, wasn't on short-term market dominance or profit. His driving principle was different. My invention is not meant to be marketed, but to be left behind.
Left behind, like for posterity, for future generations.
That seems to be the idea. So his refusal here was against impermanence itself, against the natural decay of an invention's impact over time.
What did he invent to solve that? It wasn't a physical product this time.
No. He spent another 10 years inventing a strategy for patent continuation. It wasn't about finding loopholes. It was about designing a new kind of inventive structure.
A structure. What does that mean?
Think of it like, okay, imagine designing not just a building, but designing the entire system of foundations, zoning laws, and maintenance protocols that would allow that building and future related buildings to stand for the maximum possible time without interfering with each other. He created a foundational inventive framework that could be legally and technically extended over long periods sustainably.
So invent the thing, then spend a decade inventing the system to protect and perpetuate the core idea of the thing.
Exactly. Protecting the seed, as you put it earlier, it was about ensuring the knowledge and the core benefit remained available and protected as long as possible. The source calls this a blend of wisdom and sustainability. It fulfills that mandate to leave it behind.
Wow. Okay, so looking back across these examples, the sheer force of will applied over decades, refusing to yield, it's produced some staggering results.
It really has. You see it changing photographic reality with the 30-year filter project.
Right. Then completely rewriting our relationship with air down to the molecular level with that 20-year air revolution.
And finally, even tackling the abstract problem of invention lifespan itself, designing sustainability into the process.
This approach, this total refusal to stop until the problem is completely gone, the sources call it the original driving force for civilizational evolution. That's a huge claim.
It is. But the core takeaway seems consistent. These weren't lucky breaks or flashes of insight. They were the results of a deliberate, sustained, almost obsessive methodology. The guru often framed it as solving the difficulty handed down by my master, implying a deep sense of responsibility to see it through.
He wasn't waiting for inspiration, he was hunting down the solution. For decades, if necessary.
Exactly, relentlessly pursuing that intellectual closure.
It's an incredible testament to long-term thinking and commitment.
It really is. And maybe as we wrap up this deep dive, that leaves a provocative thought for you, the listener. If the real goal, the true measure, isn't just getting something listed on the market, but making sure it's left behind,
then what problem out there are you willing to commit a decade or maybe even more of your life to solving, even if everyone else tells you it's impossible or not worth it? Because according to these sources, that kind of solitary, sustained refusal, that's where the real breakthroughs might actually come from. That's where genius is forged, not found.